You are in the Learn It section, and we are doing part one of the coaching impact. Today, we will start with the introduction, psychological safety, and social contracting section, and that will have us run through slides 1 through 9. So while I am sharing my screen, why don't you make sure that you have your Learn It reflection tool so that you can capture any thoughts or ideas or concerns or questions that you have as I describe some of the differences between these first few 9 slides in our virtual delivery option as opposed to the live delivery that you are so used to already. Okay, so right off the bat, you're going to see that there's some similarities. Our intro slide basically remains the same. You're letting people know who you are, what they should expect. Differently from live, they'll have 2 parts this time around. Each part is about 2 hours long. There's going to be a break between parts, so that's a little bit new. So you're going to let them know about that. You'll let them know that there'll be some breaks within each part as well, so that if they needed to do a little stretch or stand up for a bit or whatever it is, that's definitely going to be part of their experience here as well. So you can let them know all of that. You'll see similar and different is this belief poll icon. So in your live experience, you had a QR code that you had participants use. In the virtual experience, we are leveraging the technology to launch a belief poll. The specifics to make that happen will be listed in your moderator guide, and normally your moderators will go about launching the poll and making sure that happens in real time. But otherwise, everything else is the same. It's going to be the same 2 questions and really just an opportunity for participants to think about how their beliefs about being coach-like and curiosity and questions and advice maybe shift throughout their time with you. This will also be the time, you'll see down here, show you, this will also be the time if your organization is doing a land acknowledgement to do so. Not every organization chooses to do that, and not every organization will have on the ready their land acknowledgement that makes sense for them and whatever land and territory that they're on. So totally up to you, but the information is there to show you a little bit about what it looks like when we're doing it from a box of crayons perspective, and you can decide if you're going to do that or not. Okay, then you're going to dig into some of the slides. So you'll see that there's some things that are missing from this intro slide that aren't there that you would have done in your live version, and I'll describe why that is here as we move forward. In your live session, there's something different about being live in terms of physically seeing everybody who's there, the energy that's in the room when you're physically together. That doesn't always exist in a virtual environment. Not everybody chooses to put their video on. And sometimes you have to scroll to try to figure out who's in the room, and you might not be sure if you feel safe or comfortable because you don't even know who's there with you. And so rather than rushing into these quick, energetic, get to know you exercises, which we do in live, we slow down a little bit and take a slightly different approach in our virtual offering. So you'll see right off the bat, you'll recognize this slide. The context of the slide remains the same in terms of what you're saying, helping that organization sink into why are we doing this? What benefits do we think we'll get from this? But you're doing it a lot earlier. You're doing it right after the intro slide, and you're not rushing into those kind of trio get to know you exercises right off the bat. But otherwise, everything about this slide is the same. Then you will prepare people for their active participation, and you'll let them know that there's kind of 3 key things that we want people to think about. So this is a slide that doesn't exist in your live situation. You're going to let them know that we're going to use the chat quite a bit, that they should feel comfortable and leverage it when they need to. It's at this point that you're going to ask them to make sure they have their worksheets. Usually they're shared in advance digitally. But your moderator can maybe have them on hand and ready in case somebody says, "Ooh, I don't have mine." And that's also the time here that you would like to, or that you should introduce people to your moderator and who that person is. So you'll do that in this kind of middle step here. And then you'll remind them, similarly to last time here, that confidentiality is really important. And what do we mean by that? This is what we mean by that. The slide content is the same. It's the same as last time, so I won't spend too much time on it because there's been no changes, and we'll let people know that confidentiality marry it with these 2 intention setting questions in order to really have that person thinking about, how am I showing up today? How am I able to show up today? So confidentiality along with, and these aren't new to you, these questions are the same, right? And allowing people to spend some time to go, okay, I've probably just run from one thing to the next. How am I able to show up here for myself, for these other participants who are on this call with me? Very, very similar. In the live program, you might have people raise their hand or say, hey, who has scored higher than 5, or some way to kind of engage people in participating in that conversation if they're comfortable. And in our virtual environment, we do the same thing, but we ask them if they are comfortable to share their numbers right there in the chat. So nothing too different there, except they're sharing in a slightly different way. In the risk section, no different than in the live section. You're going to remind them of the safety net. In this case, they kind of have an extra step that they could leverage, and that could be to potentially send a message to the moderator if perhaps it's really uncomfortable to be paired up with a certain person, or that you have to, you know, hop off for a brief moment, or whatever the case may be. So make sure they know that the moderator becomes somebody that they could leverage if they need to activate or utilize the safety net at any moment. I want to highlight here, I know you already would have heard about this in our intro video, but here's an example of how, rather than a number here on the top right of your slide to demonstrate that there's an accompanying worksheet, you'll have your very, very clearly defined descriptions here. So you'll be pointing people to, okay, you're on the part 1 worksheet. It's worksheet 1, it's the top left. Pencil in your check-in for how much risk you're able to take. And if there's a worksheet accompanying, you're always going to see it right here after the time in your program leader or your facilitator notes. Always going to see it here. And then if you choose to use some of this example phrasing that we've offered up, you're going to see it down there as well. Okay, so I'm just going to call that out. It'll happen throughout the entire deck, and I already described it a little bit in the intro video, but those are going to be there as guides that you have to let your participants know where on the worksheet should they be at any given moment. So you're going to remind them that, okay, confidentiality, risk, focus, these are critical parts of you being able to be coach-like and kind of participate in the rest of this program together. But first, before we do all of that, and then this will be familiar, we'll do 1 exercise. So whereas in the live, we're doing 3, and they're quick, kind of in real time. And here we've spent some time setting the stage. Who's in the room? What can I do if I don't feel comfortable? What are we really going to be doing today? We spent a little bit more time doing that at the outset to try to manage some of the nuances of virtual versus live. And then we have them do this exercise. Your similar exercise as before. They're going to be put in a breakout room though, instead of being live and in person. But everything else remains the same. The purpose remains the same, as you can see here. It's really to prompt that curiosity, to get people thinking about, oh yes, I'm going to be speaking to people. I'm going to be jumped into a breakout room, coming out of a breakout room. So it's really to kind of energize people and set expectations that this will be happening a fair bit in our time together. And here's your first opportunity to do this. The other thing I want to mention that's really important in virtual is this here. Well as all of it, actually, being very clear and specific before they get into the breakout room so that they don't have to spend any of their limited 5 minutes going, what are we supposed to do? And what are we supposed to say? And who's supposed to go first? Your job as the facilitator is to make sure all those questions are answered before they ever get into the breakout room. So very clear, repeat it a second time. Here's what's going to happen. Are there any questions? And then very clearly help them know who should go first. And that could be anything from person closest to the window should go first, or person who's wearing the most jewelry should go first, or things of that nature that kind of prompt some fun, but also really have a purpose of not wasting any time once they get into the breakout room and trying to figure some of that stuff out themselves. So really help your participants leverage the time that they have in the breakout room by doing as much as you can before they even get in there. All right, those are our first few slides. Write down your notes, capture any questions or curiosities that you have. And I will see you next time when we go into talking a little bit more about the definition of coach-like curiosity and the 3 coach-like moments. But for now, spend a little bit more time looking at this section and stay curious. I'll talk to you soon.